In every pair of Tecovas boots, you can expect handmade quality, first wear comfort, and timeless Western style. Tecovas boots are always made from premium, bovine, and exotic leathers, and with occasional resoling, they will last a lifetime. The best way to shop for boots is at your local Tecovas store, where you'll be greeted by the smell of fresh leather and a friendly smile. Come on in, grab a cold one, get fitted by a pro, and shop the latest styles. Visit tecovas.com, that's TECOVAS.com, and don't go gently, y'all.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Podcast. In this episode, I have Dirk Durham, a world-class elk caller, member of the Meat Eater crew, works right alongside Jason Phelps at Phelps Game Calls. And in this episode, we have a lot of great conversation about elk hunting tactics, calling, and all that. So thanks for listening and enjoy. All right, Dirk, thanks so much for jumping on the Western Hunting Podcast this afternoon. We were just saying how it's a busy season right now. Last week for me was being a single dad for a little while and trying to take care of the family while my wife was out. And I just had in mind that I got to keep that main focus, be there when I'm not there, be there when I can be here. And then when I'm not there, it's not so bad. So
Absolutely.
trying to balance that and let my wife go and take care of her things. And I think that's the season right now, trying to be there for families, for work and all that. But thanks for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Yeah, you just do those things in the off season, and a little bit of extra, maybe there's some places my wife likes to go and I don't really care to go, but by golly, we're going to go there just because she likes to do that kind of stuff. She has to have her fun too. So that way it's just not lopsided,
Yep. And this weekend is our anniversary and we never do anything like crazy. It's just always like something for each other. And however, the weekend's plans so far turning out to be more like her birthday plans of we're going to go do this thing. I was like, all right,
Perfect.
We'll go to Reptile Gardens in the Black Hills here. It's just a big tourist trap thing that whatever. It's like going to Mount Rushmore here. It's like once you've been there 20 times, you've been there plenty. So
right.
But if you haven't been there, you need to check it out. It's quite a sight.
That's how you earn those kitchen passes, right?
Absolutely. So what do you
happy life?
What are you getting in your inbox for successful draw options, tags? What's your fall lining up to be?
So Montana told me I was a big fat loser, and I'm gonna try to get on the alternate list. I need to do that here. I think the cutoff's here soon, so I need to do that real soon for elk and deer. But Idaho over the counter, of course. As an Idaho resident, I don't have to apply for those OTC tags, but I do have my name in the hat for elk, trophy elk, and mule deer. So we'll see. I have no faith that I'll draw because put in for the the big win, right? You put in for the swing for the fences. So we'll see if it comes through or not. But one thing I'm really excited for is I got an Oregon elk tag, and I got it through this program where guides and outfitters in Oregon can apply within their area if they have. So this tag will be for one of the big three units there in Oregon. And anyway, the guides, outfitters, they put in for those coveted tags to where they can get a outfitter tag to where then they can turn and sell it to a client. So. And I kind of feel bad because there's a lot of people, they may take 20, 25 years to draw one of these tags. And I kind of cheated, and we were able to fund this through Phelps Game Calls marketing budget. I was able to get one of these outfitter tags for basically the Blue Mountains in Oregon, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. There's an opportunity to shoot a really big bull, and so I'm pretty pumped about that. It's a rifle hunt, though. It's rifle season. It takes place at the end of October, 1st of November.
Oh boy.
So
There we go.
probably won't need the calls, but I'm Jason Phelps is going to go along with me. I'm going to demand that he calls an elk in for me. So we'll see how that goes.
He is in the end of October.
Yeah. But those are the ones I got on the slate for elk so far. I'm waiting to hear back, on Idaho's draw. I just got points in Wyoming, and I forgot to apply in Colorado. Phelps, he's usually kind of my reminder guy. And you just need to put these things on the calendar. I'm like, hey, Phelps, when do we got to apply for Colorado? He's like, oh, that was last month. I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks a lot, buddy, for reminding me. He's like, oh, I thought you did. I thought you knew. I'm like, no. So once again, I'm a dummy. I didn't apply in Colorado for elk or deer, but yeah. So we'll see. Idaho could really pan out big if I get one of the units I've applied for there, and I'll try to either way. If I'll have an over the counter tag as backup, and then if there's any non-resident tags that get returned, then after a certain date, those go back on sale, and residents and non-residents can pick one of those tags up, and it could be a second tag. So if you already have a tag secured, you could pick that up as a second tag. So as a resident, I'd have to pay non-resident price to get one of those elk tags. So if I can find,
so you can hunt with 2 elk tags.
Yes. So typically, I don't get a tag in the same unit. 2 tags in the same unit. Typically, I'll have like, well, I really want to hunt here for bow season, but I really want to hunt this other spot for rifle season. So that's typically how I try to buy them. So
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And then I'm assuming since the Blue Mountain one is going to be covered by the marketing team, that's going to be filmed.
yeah, yep, we're gonna film it. So if you look back on the Phelps Game Calls YouTube channel, Phelps had a tag for the same area in 2021, I think, and he got a really nice bull in there. So best bull that we saw, just kind of lucked out getting it. They had seen that bull before season, but then he kind of disappeared. And then we looked over lots of bulls, and a lot of nice ones, but nothing that was that big, like as big as the one he got. And then we were hiking out of this hellhole, and as kind of a fluke, we're seeing this bull just kind of spook out, and we're like, looked at him with our binoculars, like, shoot that thing. So we gave him a range. He dialed real quick and blasted that bull, and the rest is history. But it was a dandy. It was like I don't know if you guys like to throw numbers around, just but to say that the size, we're not like inch braggers typically, but just to kind of reference how big a bull it was. It's like a 360 bull. So.
Dang.
So it's a really nice bull. I would love to shoot a big mature bull like that. So we'll see. I have to get a raghorn.
Throwing numbers out are important for that reason, just to get an idea, just to have a loop. It's like big bull in someone else's brain is 300 incher. Like, well,
right.
Yeah,
right. It's
that mean like how big?
Yeah, heavy 5-point. Yeah, I'll probably get a raghorn there. So we'll see. I hope not. Hopefully get a big one, but I'm not going to put any kind of inches on it. I'm just like, I'm looking for, just big, mature, good mass, good length, good everything, probably not going to shoot a 400 inch bull, but a 340 bull is in deep trouble if I see it. So, just something that's a, big, beautiful bull, or maybe something unique. So,
and I'm not familiar with the Northwest really at all. Where's that line for the Roosevelts and the Rockies? Is that Roosevelt's, or you got to go further west yet?
This will be a Rocky. So the line is the I-5 corridor that runs north and south through Oregon and Washington. So everything west of that I-5 is a true Roosevelt, and anything on the east side of the highway is considered like that's in that same Roosevelt country would be like a Cascades Roosevelt. So they're there's some places that they're probably a true Roosevelt, but that defining line is that highway. So the further east you get, the more interspersed, Rocky Mountains are, and so they like to kind of they like to set that line right there. That way, there's no interbreeding, and you're getting bigger antlers on a really big bodied bull. So that's a Cascade Roosevelt. Phelps shot a really nice Cascade Rosie. Oh shoot, it must have been in 2012 maybe. So it didn't qualify as a real Roosevelt, but it was basically a Cascades Rosie, which it was a stud. It was a really beautiful bull. So
Very cool. One thing that Mark and I were literally just talking about yesterday or day before is just reminders. And I got a text today from Hunt Reminder.
oh
And I just get those. I'm interested in, hear my phone going off. I don't know where it's at. Get a thing to set up for, I want to know Wyoming, I want to know Oregon, I want to know all those states. And then it just sends me a little text reminder saying that, um, Hunt Reminder, you have 2 reminder notifications in Wyoming. So something must be closing here in Wyoming soon. I'd have to,
oh
but just a little reminder there to go and click quick and do it and see, okay, yeah, it's there. Something I
yeah
buy my points for that, but kind of a cool little thing. I think it might be one of those elite Onyx um, additional things that you can get, or one of their benefits on their elite membership. But
oh yeah
handy.
yeah yeah, that's handy. It's funny, I bought an app probably in 2012 for my phone, and it was similar type of thing. You put in your hunter ID or something for whatever state, and it would keep track of how many points you had, but it also give you reminders and send you text messages. But then the name of it, like they sold the company and something changed. So then somewhere along the line, I deleted the app when I got a different phone, so I don't have the app anymore, but I still get the text messages, but I can't figure out what the heck the app's called. So at the time, I still get notifications for the states I had points in, but like Colorado, I didn't at the time. So anywhere that I didn't have points later on, then I don't get reminders. So I'm just like, dang it, it's just kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I know you hit a lot of the Northwest stuff, and the thick timbered kind of stuff might be kind of some of your bread and butter, it seems like.
Yeah.
But are you getting to venture out, I'm sure, a little bit into that high desert of Colorado or Arizona, New Mexico at all?
We've gone to New Mexico 3 times, and it's different. It's definitely different. Where we were at, we were kind of hunting the hills. It wasn't like the deserty flats, but so there was quite a bit of trees and whatnot. But they're not like trees here. You have pinyon pine, cedars, things like that, to where they're skinny at the bottom and no limbs, but then it gets bushy at the top. Whereas the Northwest, Pacific Northwest especially, you got limbs top to bottom. So you can move around. Elk can't see your feet moving, but in New Mexico, they see your feet coming. You got to be really strategic. Like you got to you use a lot of landforms instead of like brush and timber to conceal your movements. So that was definitely a change of mindset. I have points in Arizona, so someday I'm going to get a chance to go to Arizona. I got a ton of points, so here in a few years, maybe I'll get to draw a tag there.
There you go.
I did. Oh, I did. Jason Phelps and I both drew Kansas whitetail tags. So 3rd year in a row. So it's they don't have a point system per se that's defined, but I feel like we're like pretty lucky. Like somebody's smiling on us over there giving us these tags.
Yeah. I swear there preference points, because I swear for like $25. Because I was trying to dig into that just the other day, going through my states. Like, I think I hit all the deadlines, and I was waiting for Kansas to pop up, but maybe I was supposed to apply for the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about the I don't ever remember seeing a preference point thing, But they say they must keep track of something somehow, because they say, like, if you don't draw one year, you'll for sure draw the next. So I don't know how they keep it all straight. Our buddy whose property we go hunting there, he's like, I don't know how they do it. Like, I guess we should look a little deeper on the Game and Fish website, and maybe we'd find out more information. But it seems like Game and Fish websites are not always the most forthcoming. Of like, you really got to dig in to find, the exact answers. No matter what state, it seems like you got to really kind of dig in and try to figure it out, and they're all different. So it's not like you go to the same spot and find them.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a time in September? I mean, with that lineup, you're busy September. Like
Oh yeah,
you're rolling.
right.
Is there a time in that September month where you're just super jacked on high alert, where this is the go time? What's your favorite time of that month, or for archery elk?
Oh well, most of the time it's all related to where I'm at. So it seems like regionally, different part of the state or different states, I feel like the rut activity or the calling activity is a little better overall. But year to year can really throw you. For instance, let's say if I was up hunting North Idaho, the very tail end of the season for me has been really good. I know other guys do pretty good kind of early. So, but I've then been there, during the time I prefer, and had my teeth kicked in a few times too. So, you kind of make your plans and you think, okay, I'm going to take advantage of it. Same with Wyoming, for instance. I've been to Wyoming a few times, and hunting early has always been good. That first week or the second week of season's been really good. And then we've hunted there like the third week after a week, I said, dang, that is the most bugles I've ever heard in a week and not killed something. Like there was so much bugling activity, but the bulls were cowed up so bad, and they would just bugle and run. You just could not get them to stand. Whereas fast forward a couple years, and a buddy of mine hunted that same spot around the same time, and he said, yeah, they bugled good and they came in good. And so year to year, it's just a perfect week in the exact spot can vary a lot, So it some years you get a 10 and some years you get a 2. So it just kind of depends on overall. But if you can invest time, especially if you live in elk country, and invest time in a certain spot over a few years, you'll understand those kind of nuanced times when elk are more receptive to calling, and then you can kind of dial in your time off if you can to take advantage of it.
So that's something that I've always almost been afraid of, showing up too late. And I've hunted a lot of early season, and you hit it right when they're talking really well, and in that early season, it's fun to see a bull by himself now, and then he's with cows the next day, and it's just like herd dynamics are not developed, and they're all over the place, and seem to be maybe a little easier to call in. But then I get nervous about going in too late, where, like you said, they're just so grouped up that you can't get them to stand still. So is there a solution that you've come up to for that? For you hit that time, whenever that time is, that they just are so grouped up that how do your tactics change, I guess I could say?
Well, you have some very valid fears. Those are the same fears I think of every year, and a lot of times in that early season, it can be really good or it can be really bad. Like you can't even hear an elk bugle. Like you show up one year, it's like, oh man, there's bulls everywhere bugling. For instance, there's a place cameraman Dusty and I went here in Idaho a few years ago, and we heard tons of bulls. Called in a few. Went back there the same exact year or the same exact week the next year, and it was a ghost town, man. We couldn't hardly buy a bugle. It had changed completely dramatically. Same with that last, the later part of the month where, maybe they're grouped up like you were saying, and you hear a lot of bugling, but they're not coming to the calls. You just have to be very strategic at that point, and especially that late season, if you can have a 2-person setup, at least, 2 3-person setup, have a caller shooter set up. If you have bulls that are just will not come, but aren't moving away too much, then as a caller you can stay put and you just send your shooter ahead. You say, okay, I'm going to stand here. I'm going to keep him talking. It's on the shooter at that point to get in close, close the gap, and make a shot. So depending on the country and how many cows there are, can be kind of a bad deal. So if you're in a place where herds are 30 cows and in a group, that's a lot of eyes to kind of get by. But in an area, let's say you're in North Idaho and there's just not a lot of cows, there might be three or four cows in a herd, the herd bull has. That's a lot easier to do, to get past. And then seems like a lot of times country that has a lot of larger elk numbers and maybe more open country too. So plotting your course over there without getting seen and smelled is critical too. But I'm a big fan of that. Send your shooter in ahead if you can, and especially if it's open country where they're going to have to, they can maybe stop at 100 yards and see your calling position. They're going to hang up right at 100 yards. So that, coupled with bulls that don't want to come to the calls, then you just got to send a shooter out ahead and see what they can do while you keep them talking.
That makes a lot of sense, though. Is there? Oh, go on.
And I was going to say too, I'm like, sometimes the strategy goes from, well, I don't care about herd bulls. I just want to get a bull. So satellites, are a lot more callable in those kind of situations too. Satellite bulls, younger bulls, depending on the unit. Some units they have, special draw stuff that has a good age class. The herd bull's a 350, 380 type bull, and your satellite bulls are 300-inch bulls, which I don't know, unless you're crazy and killed lots of bulls, a lot of 300-inch bulls, and like, no, that 300 bull's going to get an arrow through him. Right. So, trying to figure out how to call in the satellite bulls off a large herd of elk. Or then just maybe you don't beat your head against the wall, right? So let's say that you haven't put all your eggs in one basket in this unit. You don't have just one little spot to hunt. Yeah, sure, there's a bunch of elk there. There's a herd bull. He won't come to calls today, but I'm going to go maybe check out different areas in the unit. So if I mess around with them for a day and I'm just cannot make any headway with them, I'm going to just leave that area and go to a completely different spot. And sometimes driving across a valley to another mountain range, or just relocating 50 miles, if your units are big enough, will make all the difference in the world, because things are not happening in the same way. Maybe they're not, the bulls are coming to calls at that point. Maybe the cows aren't fired up and in estrus or whatever in the herd, and he's willing to kind of leave them and come out to the call and then go back. It's almost like you're leaving no stone unturned at that point. But then you do know where that one good herd is, and he didn't come to calls, let's say Monday. Well, I'm back in there Wednesday or Thursday trying it again. Yeah. That is if it's an area that I'm not worried about other people finding. Now, if you're in an area where you're a little worried about other people finding them, then you'll have to change your tactics again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could see that in the area where I hunt in Colorado. It's not giving away nothing, but you've got the Roaring Fork Valley near Aspen, Basalt, Glenwood Springs, and you got the Roan Plateau across the valley, and then you go the other direction, you got the Vail Valley, like three totally different ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
High desert, high alpine to little lower alpine stuff, just totally different ecosystems. And you're exactly right. I'm texting buddies that are on the other side of the valley and are probably experiencing a totally different energy level, or just a different group of bulls that are acting a little different. So that makes
sense. Yeah, and that goes the same thing for early season when you can't get them to talk. Let's say there's nothing talking where you're at. Change locale if you can. Try to cross the other side of the mountain range. Try a different mountain range, whatever. If you have that luxury, and oftentimes they'll be on fire and 20, 30 miles away from where you're at, whereas where you're at today, there's just nothing going on.
Hmm.
But in a few days, there may be something going on. So, like I say, as a snapshot of the rut, every day rut intensity is not the same, especially year to year. And I've had it where you'll chase bugles. You'll hear bugles all day long. There's probably 6 or 8 bulls bugling, and you chase bugles all day long. And for whatever reason, you couldn't make it happen. You think go back the next day, you're going to just scoop them up with butterfly nets. You go back the next day and it is a ghost town. There's not a bugle one. You can't hear it's almost laughable. Like if you were to try to tell somebody there was a bunch of elk there the day before, they'd call you a liar. I've had that too. So, just because they were on fire one day doesn't mean they're going to be on fire next. So you have to temper your expectations and understand that to be like, oh, okay, well, that's all right. Nothing talking here. I'm going to go over to the next spot and try it. So you have to have different game plans, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through the alphabet to hit all these little different spots. And, try them in the same. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what do you think that like the reasoning behind that is? Do you think that's somebody blowing them out? Do you think it's changing in atmospheric pressure? What do you think that you've noticed? Is it weather that causes them to be so loud one day and shut up the next?
We've asked a biologist this, and he didn't give me an answer that I liked that much, other than he said, well, one day, there's a cow or cows that are in heat, and then the next day they're out of heat, and then the bulls aren't bugling anymore. But I know that bulls will bugle whether there's a cow in heat there or not, a lot of times. So that didn't satisfy my answer. But I do think my personal opinion is maybe if you have a place that you have a rut fest one day and there is a cow or cows in heat, and these elk rut hard and the cows get bred or whatever, and the next day they're not in heat anymore, and everybody needs a break. Yeah, right. It's like they maybe put their day on pause, like, oh man, that was a lot of work. We're tired. Or maybe those bulls, maybe the herd bull is still there, but he's tired out, but there's those satellite bulls, maybe they moved on. Some of these elk I hunt are nomadic to where they come and check this group of elk. They keep moving around a little bit. They won't stick with that. Let's say those satellite bulls, they won't stick with that same little herd of elk all season. They'll come in there to all the bugling and all the chaos. And if they can't participate or can't get a cow bred, or maybe they do get a cow bred and there's nothing going on, they leave. I think that happens too, just from what my trail cameras show. For instance, one fall I had trail camera set up where all summer there was no bulls there, but there was cows. And come September, there was new bulls on that camera every single day, and only a couple of them were on there every day. But every day there were new bulls that were there and gone. There one day, gone the next. So I think there's bulls that do rove and move around, looking for opportunities to breed. And if they don't see it, they move on. But that's just my personal theory.
Yeah, and some pretty big loops and circles too, right?
Yeah.
Pretty large movements that's a hard thing to track, especially I'm sure in that dense, thick country.
Yeah.
But
and herds, and as a herd in general, some herds will be, the whole herd will move. One day they're there, and the next day they've moved over into a different spot too. And they'll make kind of a circuit. Let's say they're at this spot one day, and the next day they'll be over another spot, and then they make a big loop and circle. And then they'll be back at that first place. You messed with them eventually, but who knows what day it is. And then like patterns, like in New Mexico, we kind of found that those elk didn't kind of really stick to a pattern, like they went here every day or that day. It's just kind of like they followed where the rut took them every single day. You might find the same group of elk on one water hole. You kind of start your morning before daylight at a water tank or a water hole, because that's, the elk are going to go down there and rut at night and get drinks and stuff. And then as daylight approaches, they leave, and they may take a complete different line every day. They may take the same line, but then they'll branch off and go somewhere else. I think it kind of depends on maybe what kind of pressure from other bulls they're getting, or from other, maybe our bugles are kind of pushing them towards a different direction. They think we're an elk, and they're like, nope, we're not gonna lay down here, ladies. Let's keep going, and they just push into different places every day. But a lot of times they would revisit some of the same places, but it was just kind of haphazard. There was no like pattern to it.
In every pair of Tecovas boots, you can expect handmade quality, first wear comfort, and timeless Western style. A great pair of Western boots will elevate a casual look or add a refined flair that'll draw both eyes and compliments. Tecovas boots are always made from premium bovine and exotic leathers, and with occasional resoling, they will last a lifetime. The best way to shop for boots is at your local Tecovas store, where you'll be greeted by the smell of fresh leather and a friendly smile. Come on in, grab a cold one, get fitted by a pro, and shop the latest styles. We also offer custom branding and leather stamping if you want to personalize your boots or fine leather goods. As spring makes its way into summer, stay cool in a short sleeve, moisture wicking pearl snap, or make your own shade with one of their classic straw hats, new in both men's and women's styles. And if you're planning to hit the road, Tecovas' ever-growing lineup of rugged and full-grain leather bags will get you where you're headed in style and are built to last decades. Visit tecovas.com. That's TECOVAS.com, and don't go gently, y'all.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
I had a hunt a couple of years ago that they did that exact thing. You were saying how I was in there by myself for 2 days, and it's like they're going crazy. They're really talking. I'm getting some awesome interactions, some close calls, and then my buddy hikes in, and it's like, I swear there was elk here. I swear they were here. I could have shot 2 of them.
And he's like, there's no elk here. There's no. I had a situation like that right before dark one night. I found some bulls. There were 6 bulls just going mad, and I seen a giant. And it's just this little opening. It's all big timber country, but there was just this little tiny opening that I could see across the canyon, and this big bull was just standing up there, just screaming. He looked like a school bus parked in this spot. Like, he was so big, and all these other bulls down below him in this basin just going off. And pretty soon he charged out of there and run down and started. You could hear him fighting, and we ran out of daylight. And I'm like, oh man, tomorrow morning it's going to be lights out. So I go in there. I didn't hear a bugle. I was there from an hour before daylight to an hour after daylight. I never did find them. I stood in that same little opening that big bull stood in the night before. I couldn't even find a track from that bull, and I'm just like, this is dumb. This is crazy. But that's elk hunting. It seems like it's a slam dunk, but it hardly ever is. It seems like right when you think you can outguess them and what they're going to do, then they always change the plan. But now that I say that, and I've talked about like that New Mexico thing, but that's not always the way it is. Like, there's some elk that get on a normal pattern, and they just do their pattern all the time too. So it's kind of weird. But I do think that I think they just kind of go with where the rut takes them a lot of times, and where they smell the smells and hear the bugles and where the cows are at that particular moment in time, and then they move around and push them around, and they may get pushed into some places that you wouldn't have thought. And I think that may be might have been what happened with those elk that I got into. I mean, they weren't even there being quiet. I think they just completely changed zip codes in the night or something, pushed them into somewhere where I just couldn't find them.
Do you see that even though it might be different elk moving in and out of those different areas, do you find that, say, it's always this pocket, this little area right here, that little draw is more likely to hold some of those? Say you've got a one big draw and it's got a couple little extra things in there that could potentially hold elk. There's no reason as a human looking at it why there shouldn't be there, but there's one spot that always kind of holds them a little bit tighter. And the reason why I asked that is just a spot that I went to last year, and I'm headed back again this year. The I got this weird thing going on with the outfitter in the area. He's a little pissed that I'm going to be going into there, and it's public.
Oh,
And he told me he was going to help me do some. I'm basically paying a trespass fee. He's going to drop me off in there because he has access and he's an outfitter in the area. And he basically said, well, if you could just stay south of this spot, that'd be great. I was like, I'm paying a trespass fee to get onto the public a little easier and pack out that. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I hunt by myself and I couldn't get that elk out in time. There's no way. And it'd be end up 60, 70 miles for just me. And the one area he told me to avoid in was an area we were on a big bull last year.
oh, geez. Of course, he probably knows that. He knows that that spot holds elk, and he's just like, yeah, you can go anywhere you want, but right there, because he knows that's the good spot.
Yeah, so it had me thinking like, well, you just said that, so I think I'm on to this. And I don't know that area well yet. I've only spent one season in there, but it just made me think about, I think I need to go spend some time in there. And he said, well, I guess that wouldn't be a deal breaker. It's like in the back of my head, of course it's not a deal breaker. You can't keep me from going from
Right.
public land.
Oh,
But
yeah.
so anyway, back to the question is just is
But yeah, typically you'll find elk in the same spots every year. In places that have wolves, large concentration of wolves, that will kind of change it. A lot of the places I've hunted over the years where there wasn't a wolf presence, there used to be a lot of elk. Now you go there, there's nothing. And I don't know if that's just because they ate them or they've moved them out. But I will say, even within the same season, you'll have places where elk will be, and then if there's wolves present, either they clam up or or the elk just move over into the next drainage or something away from where the wolves are at. And also, I've had instances where one weekend you'll bugle into this hellhole and there's wolves howling everywhere, and then a week or two later I go back and I do hear bugles. So I think the wolves are pretty nomadic as well. They move way more than a lot of people give them credit for. A lot of places there in North Idaho, it's not really a game rich environment. So I think that wolves keep moving all the time to try to make sure they have food, and so they move through areas pretty quickly, and they'll be there one day, but you may not see them back in that particular spot. I'll see all the rest of September, just kind of depending. But if there's tons of elk around, wolves will typically keep in that area until they run themselves out of food.
well, I'm glad that outfitter doesn't know I have a hunting podcast because he literally told me not to talk about it because
Don't tell anybody either.
don't tell anybody. He said if my hunters knew that I had this arrangement with you, they'd be a little annoyed because they probably spent 10 grand on an elk hunt to get to this area, and I'm just paying the trespass fee because I found the spot.
That's
So,
awesome.
whoops! But it's a huge.
So I got a question on the wolf topic there, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you see that the wolves typically are doing a better job at moving the elk off of private land and keeping them, moving around more, or do they still group up around private land?
Well, from what
If
I've
that makes
seen,
sense.
yeah, what I've seen here in my home state is North Idaho. There's a lot of vast backcountry, very remote country, to where pre-wolf it had a lot of elk in it. Nowadays, there's very few elk, and they're just in little pockets. If you kind of know where to go, you can kind of find them. But the closer to town you get, the more elk you find. In fact, on near agriculture, of course, that's better habitat, but also there's more protection from man. I think elk have kind of figured out wolves don't like to be as close to town as comparatively to, on the middle of the backcountry. They love it in the backcountry because they they don't have interactions with humans. But the closer to town they get, the elk I think feel safer. There's a For instance, there's one place for years when there were a lot of elk in the backcountry. You wouldn't see these elk in this little field down by a river, down the bottom of this river drainage. During the wintertime, you wouldn't even see elk there. In spring, you wouldn't see elk there. Nowadays, you'll see 100 elk in that field, but it's right by a busy highway. Elk aren't seem to be bothered by people, but I think they go there because they know that wolves don't feel as comfortable trying to come around there in the daytime trying to get them. So, but yeah, So I would say, depending on the private property, if the private property has comings and goings of people, let's say a working cattle ranch where you got working hands out there, working on fences and moving cows around and stuff, elk are probably going to move towards that more than up where they're completely undisturbed, but by humans. But then that's where the wolves are going to feel more at home. That's my opinion.
So shifting gears a little bit over to the call world. I would say I'm a competent caller. I wouldn't say I'm outstanding. Can make some decent sounds. I'm not tone deaf. But I don't have near the maybe just not near the ear that I guess you have products available for. Meaning I've pulled out the gray amp, seems to be one. I have three of them that are still in good working order. My white amp I wore out last year, so I need another one. And then the Maverick is another one in my that I have right now, and then the black amp. So I think it was last year I bought a bunch of them just to kind of see what some of those different sounds were making, and then it came down to more which one was working better for me. Are some of these diaphragm calls with the different thicknesses, and I understand different thicknesses of that latex is going to mean easier or harder to blow, make that sound. Are some of those meant more for different fits of mouth and comfort and abilities, or are truly like that gray and the white going to give you just a different sound?
Yeah. So everybody's so different as far as how they blow the call and how they maneuver it, or they use it with their tongue. So the fitment is going to be exactly the same on all those. They all have the same tape cut. They all have the same exact frame. The only difference is that latex and how thick it is and how tight it's stretched. So some people, for them to do like a real wimpy, immature bugle, they may need to have one particular reed that they can do it with. But if they want to sound like a big gnarly bull, they need a different diaphragm to make that achieve that same sound with, just because that's how they blow it, or maybe that's just part of their skill level at this time. And then just it's crazy the way some people operate calls. So, for instance, I like the Maverick. It's a pretty heavy latex, pretty tight stretch, and the sounds I get out of it, some of them I can't get out of some of the thinner latex diaphragms. For instance, like let's say the black one. Now I can do all the same calls and stuff, but to get the same tones out of it. But I've had people demonstrate a particular call, like for instance the black one, and make some sounds. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Like I can't make that sound with that diaphragm. So I think it's very user specific on the experience with each call. So that's why I always tell people, and you did good. I always tell people get a handful of them, 3 at least, maybe 4, just to play with them and kind of see which ones suit your style of calling, how hard you blow it, how you manipulate it with your tongue. Because, like I say, you may get certain calls that this one makes really good cow calls for me, but this one I can get big screams with, and this other one I can get wimpy bugles with, or you're just kind of all over the board. But just to get all those different kind of notes and different elk vocalizations, then some people it takes a few different calls to achieve that, and others it doesn't. And I don't know if that's just how they operate it, or if it's just skill level, or what exactly.
We had Joel Turner on just last week, and I watched the video. He sent us an audio clip, and his mouth was like way open while he was.
Yeah.
And I tried to emulate that just because it's like that seemed so odd to me, and I couldn't. It was odd, like his tongue was sticking straight up almost. And I mean, he sounds great, but and I don't know, different call. I don't know who he uses, but it's just a different look, a different feel, and he's able to make whatever sounds he needs to effectively, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have to picture your mouth as a sound chamber, right? And even your lips. So what you do with your mouth, your lips, your jaw, the chamber of your mouth will affect the sound of your calls. So like I've been around Joel a lot, and the way he does that, he arches his tongue up there. I've tried that. Either he's been doing like push-ups and curls and like squats with his tongue or something, because it takes a lot of tongue strength to get that contact with the roof of your mouth, and to get force air across it, and have your mouth more open like that. You could achieve something similar with the way you normally do it, but you may have to spread your smile, open your smile up and expose more of your teeth area, and just allow more air to escape your mouth, right? Some people will kind of mess up when they try to make cow calls. They learned, oh, it's the EO sound, EO, EO. Well, it's not EO, because then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll do EO. They'll make a donut shape or an O shape with their lips. Well, then it degrades the sound of the call. It's more of an EA. EA. You shouldn't like shape your lips like an O, like you're saying O. You want to kind of keep your lips kind of open. Maybe almost like you're smiling a little bit, just kind of keep it open, and it'll sound a lot different. Sound different and better. So yeah, there's a lot of technique on what people do with their mouth, and like you say, Joel does that. It's very unique. I've seen a couple other people do that, but I've seen other people just do different things with their mouth just to make the sound, and then placement is key too. Some people, for instance, I try to put mine right in the middle of my palate. My diaphragm right in the middle of my palate, right where my tongue feels strongest. But I've seen folks who put it really far forward where it's touching their teeth, and they use the tip of their tongue instead of the middle of their tongue. And then I've seen other guys and gals use the back of their tongue. The further back you go, though, you get more of a gag reflex. The further forward you go, you get kind of a tickle. So everybody's tongue is sensitive in a different way too. So just finding the right way for you to do it, and then playing with your calls. That's how you're going to achieve, the right sounds. And I've always said you don't have to sound like a world champion caller to call elk. The more perfect quintessential elk bugles you hear, maybe not a lot of elk sound like that anyway. Maybe they sound a little bit more raspy. Maybe they sound a little less clean. Maybe they sound not so well put together, but it's like, that's definitely an elk bugle. It just doesn't sound like the quintessential perfect bugle, right? I think a lot of people get that in their head. It's kind of like the coyote howl you always hear on Bugs Bunny or in on scary movies or whatever. It's like the same audio profile, right? Right? Same with the bull elk. It's like diddle-doo. I mean, it's the same cookie cutter bugle, right? Well, if you can't make that same cookie cutter bugle, that's okay. But if you can make some bugles that sound pretty good, like the elk you hear on YouTube, that's what's important. So I always tell people practice what you see on YouTube from elk. There's tons of videos of just elk running around national parks and stuff. They video and bulls bugling and you soon find out that you don't have to sound like a perfect like 3 note bugle you hear
Well,
most often.
thank goodness for that. Oh, do you have a recommended practice that works well to help understand some of those different capabilities of each call? So, I did this morning. I took one and I just did just a simple bit of a locator, and then I went off not with a growl, but just a simple like guttural huh, and let that go out. So just a basic bugle. I tried, and then I went and switched to the next one. I switched to the next one, just trying to see, okay, these 3 calls or 3 diaphragms, same call. What's the difference? Do you have anything like that or something similar that is almost a workout or a let's trial and error some of these different things? Or how do you like to tell people to mess around with those 3 to see what their capabilities are?
Well, since I'm at my desk, let me grab a diaphragm here and I'll demonstrate a couple things that you should practice. So I always say there's a few fundamental things you can practice, and whether you're a seasoned vet or somebody that's new, it's going to help you. It's going to help you clean up. And where some people kind of lose, or some people struggle with the during the note changes to be smooth and sound good, because sometimes people as they go from the low note to the high note, somewhere in the middle it'll kind of break. They'll like make a breaking sound or whatever. So I would practice this one, and this is like the just like a siren sound. And then focus on smooth transitions from top to bottom. So where you won't get any of that. Mine broke a couple times there. You don't want to have that note break, and to achieve that, it has to do with like tongue pressure, moving too quickly, or like your diaphragm, like your internal, like your core. Like brace yourself. The better you brace your core, the better your bugles are going to sound, and your grunts. You move your core, you almost do a belly bounce, like you're like flexing your stomach as you do your chuckles and stuff, and your grunts. So I would practice that siren sound a lot, but also don't practice the stuff you're good at. Let's say you're like, yeah, I can do that normal bugle pretty good, but don't practice that all the time. So figure out, it's like, well, what don't I do good? And the best way, I think we're all our most harshest and most honest critics, right? If you do it for a buddy and your buddy's like, oh yeah, I sound pretty good, because he don't want to be a jerk and say, dude, that sucked. So I always recommend take your cell phone, set it on video mode, and record yourself. And not only like make sure it's on video and you can see your face and see what you're doing and how, like we talked about what Joel does. He does something a little different. But look at what you're doing and how your lips are on your tube and how your face is moving and stuff throughout your calls. And you'll pick up little things like, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. It's kind of like trying to do cartwheels when you're a kid. It's like, I did a cartwheel, and it's like your feet came like 2 feet off the ground. It's not a cartwheel, but once you kind of see it, it's like, oh, then you can correct it. And also playing things back, you're like, oh, I think I sound pretty good. Or maybe you use 3 different calls and you're like, they sound all the same to me, but then you play it back and you watch it. It's like, oh, I can start to see different nuanced sounds. That call sounded better when I did this, or that call sounded better when I did that. That maybe blowing it, we don't really notice, but it's a huge help is recording yourself and then watching it back and seeing little things you're doing with your mouth or your jaw or whatever to improve your calling.
Nice. Yeah, your mic did a really good job with those high pitched notes too, and no problem. And I'm assuming that it's your 100th time on a on a mic. Thousands.
Well, I got way away from it, and then I was worried. Sometimes these like Zoom or Google Meets will block out any high pitched noises. So I was like, I hope it don't block out this high pitched noise. So
Didn't work with Joel. He sent us a video, but this one worked perfect. That was good.
okay, perfect.
Out and clear. We'll give that a shot. Um, so I have some gear organization problems. This is the next thought process while I'm hunting. So I got my big chest pack with my bino harness. I like my pockets. I like this. I like that. I mean, it's all there. But then one of those problems can be relieved if I would ever find an appropriate rangefinder pocket. But otherwise, I set that rangefinder around my neck, and that thing sits right here because I like it just so quick, nice and close, real quick, short movements. So I've got a rangefinder. I got my final pack, my rangefinder, and then the reason why I didn't have both of these on me on my neck at the same time is because there's two more straps, which for listeners, I'm holding the Easy Estrus and the Easy Sucker. I didn't put those around my neck because there's two more straps. You can see it building up.
Right.
What is going on in your front here that is to manage? I like multiple cow calls. I like my diaphragms are easy to hide and slip into spots when I'm not carrying them around my mouth. How do you manage range-finders, all your various external reads, all that stuff to not be such a cluster of strings dangling? Or are you living with it?
No, I don't like a lot of crap hanging around my neck either. And for a long time, I used to keep my rangefinder in my side pocket of on my belt pocket of my pack. I'd have it there, and then I would have the lanyard tied off up on my shoulder strap to where I would pull it out. I could raise it up and I could drop it, and it's going to fall and it's going to hit just below my waist a little bit if I just need to drop it and pull back and shoot or something. The problem with that is you don't always have your pack on when you're going to shoot. A lot of times, if you have a little bit of better amount of time to set up, I prefer to pull my pack off. That's just your profile's bigger, right? Let's say a bull walks behind a tree, you pull back to draw your bow when his eye goes behind the tree, but when you make some movement of drawing, he picks up your pack moving. Had you been, another, foot narrower or whatever, however big your pack is, you wouldn't have got picked off. So if I can, I like to pull my pack off when I'm set up to shoot. So that's out the window. So I have to put it somewhere else. So for a long time, I didn't even wear a bino harness because I hunt such thick country. Binoculars were a waste of weight around my neck. So I never carried them. So I would sometimes I would put that rangefinder just loop around my neck, and then my shirt at the time had a little chest pocket, and I'd just put it in that chest pocket, and it'd roll like that, and then I'd pull it out, zap, and then put it back. That way it's not dangling around, swinging around. But since then, I've been using, because I'm hunting different places now. I'll have my bino harness on, and then I have a couple of side pouches. One's for the rangefinder, which works really good. It's got it's got like a little coily, like a little piggy tail coil lanyard on it that kind of coils out, like stretches out and then stretches back when I put it back. So I'll zap with it and then just put it back or just drop it, one or the other. On the other side, there's a similar sized pouch that has, and this whole setup's built by FHF gear. And on the left side, I have a little pouch that I can keep my chapstick, my predator call, a couple other little things, and on the outside, there's a little pouch I can keep my it's just a open, like it has an elastic band on this edge of this pouch, just a pocket. You just slide my Easy Estrus call into, and it'll just hold it just fine. But something to think about, like to manage your cords. So you look at duck hunters, right? They've got that necklace of all these different duck calls hanging around their neck, and they're on one big lanyard, right? So you could do something like that. You could just narrow it down to one lanyard that looks more like a necklace, and then you just tie them onto that. I don't like a lot of crap around my neck. Those things are kind of rough. I have delicate skin. I'm a sensitive flower, so I don't like all that paracord stuff around my neck. So you could think about maybe instead of doing that, there's all those little retractable lanyards, like you know, different workplaces. If you had like a little pass card, you know, a key swipe card to access different parts of the building or whatever, there's, you know, it's got a really fine rope on it, just a retractable thing. You could put those on retractable things on your on your bino harness somewhere. You know, you attach the retractable things to your bino harness. That way you can just grab it, pull it up, call with it, and let it go, and it's just going to go right back.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I had a bugle tube. So,
Yeah. So the bugle tube, I wrap the Phelps tubes come with a stretchy cord on it. So I wrap the stretchy cord around the tube, and I just carry it in my hand all day while I'm actively hunting. Now at the end of the day, and it's time to hike out, or we're hiking up a steep precipice where I'm not going to call for a little bit, I will unwrap it and I'll just throw that thing over my shoulder. But I don't walk around with my tube over my shoulder unless I'm not going to be the caller or the shooter. I'm just there for fun or something. But I'm definitely going to have my tube in my hand most of the day.
yeah, got it. That just was an area for improvement we get a lot of gear, and it's nice to have multiple calls to make different sounds, and it's just a gear management thing. It just hit me this morning. It's like, I got to ask this question because it's been driving me nuts. I got to find something to simplify, and maybe with I just have one of the big chest pack from Vortex, that the one that they have that, well, I don't even know what it's called, but there've been a lot of new things since then, so I'll have to check out on that.
Yeah, and also some of those will, like the FHF, it's like a modular pat or a bino harness, so you can change and put different accessories on the harness itself. You know, maybe you don't like all those side pockets or the rangefinder pocket or whatever. You can mix and match, but they do have like a little wind checker pocket, which I've pulled the wind checker out and put it in my pants pocket a lot of times. But that little wind checker pocket, your easy estrus will slide it right in there perfectly as well. But then you have to tie off the lanyard on somewhere. You just tie it onto the harness somewhere, and then poke the rope into the pocket first, and then you put your easy estrus in there. That way you don't have stuff dangling around. You just pull it out, blow it, and you can drop it or stuff it back in real quick, depending on the situation. I've done that in it, and it's not just, you know, FHF. Other people have those little pockets for wind checkers or whatever. Maybe that's the key there. You tie it on somewhere, and then stuff the rope inside the pocket with your call.
Yeah. So, do you have any I never do this or I always do this in your calling plan, in your calling game plan? Are there certain things where you're just, they're my nevers or they're my always things that you'll use? That makes sense.
It for me, calling elk is always an experiment. There's no, in my opinion, there's no silver bullet. There's no like secret call or one call that kills them all, right? And some people are like, oh yeah, you gotta just do this one call and it'll come right in. But I've been doing this for, I think this will be 35 years. I've been actively calling elk 35 years. While everybody else in high school was playing football and in the fall, I hunted elk every single year. I hunted every single day of September, whether for me or my brother or my buddy. So and that was just in high school. So picture that amount of time, and then fast forward, you know, to I get to spend most of the month of September now chasing elk. But what I found is there's no certain one call that calls in the elk every single time. What I've found is every elk is a little bit different, and over the years, some of them like the same things, but you just never know what you're going to get into when you first make contact with a bull. So I'm experimenting. It's always an experiment. I'm trying to figure out what calls he likes to hear the most and what he responds to. And once I find what he responds to, I will continue to give those to him.
Yeah. And with the response that you're getting, are you concerned about he's responding, but are you concerned about alerting and as those calls as you getting a little closer? Is that if he's responding, is he liking it? Is that just is that in your head going in your head that he must
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, he must like it. And I try not to, and I won't say I always, but I try not to escalate before he does. Right. So I'm listening to his attitude, his disposition, checking his listening to his temperature for per se. If from his first bugle to let's say we're 4 or 5 bugles in, has he escalated? Has he like gotten more frustrated sounding? Can you hear the frustration in his bugle, or is it the same bugle that you heard the very first time, or has he kind of decreased a little bit? Has he like got a little wimpier sounding? And then I have to gauge it off of that. So if he's getting a little wimpier sounding, I feel like he's not feeling like aggressive. You don't really want to fight bad. I don't want to start becoming too aggressive too quickly either. So I'll try to back off my calls to sound kind of wimpy as well until maybe he starts sounding more aggressive again. But if he escalates his frustrations, he gets a bigger, meaner sounding bugle, then I escalate as well. But I try not to escalate until they do. But that's what I'm really looking for is I'm listening to like what's he what emotions is he portraying in his bugle. I don't know elk if they speak an exact language. I haven't really tried to figure that out too much, but I just listen to the emotion in their calls. Is he mad? Is he frustrated? Does he sound like he's a little bit timid? And then you have to kind of tailor your calls to that.
Because if you look on YouTube, it's a little confusing. I mean, we as average hunters look to guys like you who are accomplished callers and or do this full time. We look to guys like you and Joel and there's plenty of thousand names we could name of accomplished callers, and some get a very opinionated on there's this magic bullet, there is that thing,
Mm-hmm.
hear this idea and you want to roll with it, and so many things it obviously is not, there is no true silver bullet because of all the ideas and thoughts of how you like to talk to elk. It's just so confusing to wade through that, and I feel like I pick those pieces apart and I have my own style, and it seems to work for me, but I don't know if it's working. I don't know how many elk that are just like they're quiet and they just sneak off.
They're like, okay, I don't like this guy. I'm out of here.
Who knows? That. I
Yeah,
put down my Primos Terminator a long time ago.
yeah, yeah. There was a time those worked like a champ, um, and today and I feel like if you were to like go out with one of those and like you practiced and I still think you could probably make some pretty decent sounds of calling elk with one of those. Yeah, no, I know people do every year, but it's the people who use those kind of calls or any call that they bought the thing on their way to elk camp and they tooted on it a little bit on their truck and they get there and like, we're going to make this work. Man, I had a couple years ago, I had some guys coming in, I called in and I wasn't really calling them in. They just heard me and this other bull, and they just come in on us, and they were making noises. They're not even elk-like noises, and I don't know where they had got their education or their idea what an elk sounds like, but they were making these noises like it sounded like somebody was hurting a little puppy or something, like these little squeaky, whiny little these little weird puppy whines and like puppy screamy. It wasn't even a scream. It's just weird. They were just weird noises. It sounded nothing like an elk. And these guys come right up on me. I thought I was going to get shot. It was bow season. I was like, man, if these guys, if their target acquisition's like they're calling, we may get shot here. And anyway, it spooked off the elk because it sounded so bad. It was like the most inappropriate calling that you could have ever heard. I think that's a huge no. But if you get the calls, you practice with them a bit, regardless of course, I want you to buy the Phelps ones, but if you buy brand X, whatever, just go out there and get proficient with them to where it's like, I kind of sound like an elk. I kind of do, really. You're making elk type sounds from what you've watched on YouTube. Don't go watch your favorite YouTube people and try to emulate them. Watch elk and send the missus, or if you're not married, just when you're sitting around the house watching those videos, grab your tube, and when the bull bugles, you bugle. You try to copycat exactly what those bulls are sounds are they're making, and you'll get better, and you'll sound a lot more like elk.
It not just because I'm talking to you, but these your calls really do work the best for me. I really struggle on other brands, and I think primarily it's the metal piece for me, and how it is a gradual slope, not a concave kind of thing. Just
Yeah,
that that I need that support because I can't blow the ones without the support very well, but also having that nice gradual instead of a like a bubble there.
yeah,
I can't get it tight
right.
in my mouth, but they
those
work
bubble
great
those
for
bubble kind don't work for me either. And I think it's like shape of your palate, right? So, but I know like the guys that do like the bubble shape, then they try to use one of these and they're like, I don't know if I really like that. It doesn't make, it doesn't fit their mouth right.
yeah.
So I think there's so many different shapes of mouths that um, it's hard to find the one call to do it all, right, for everybody. Um,
Right. Absolutely. And we're running out of time. We're way over time here already, and I taking them up.
really, pretty fast.
Yeah, I know. And we're at hour 10 already, or an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So I apologize, but I do want to ask another couple of calling questions if I can.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
your calling plan. I want to hear kind of what your game plan is, and I know that it adjusts based on attitude, based
Right.
on situation. But um, is there a general linear plan that kind of you're filling in the gaps and changing that as that goes because of how he's acting? But is there generally this is my first, this is generally kind of what my second is, and what's that look like for you?
Yeah. So just as far as just locating bulls, I kind of start out with just a few quiet, super quiet cow calls because you just don't know if there's an elk really close to you. Let's say you get out of the truck and walk not very far and you make a few quiet cow calls, you may hear something rustle around the brush. I don't know how many times I've got out of the truck and walked over the road's edge and bugled or something, and shoot, their elk ran off right there. Like you just parked on them. Unbeknownst to you, you just parked on them, right? Other times they're across the canyon a mile away. But so I like to kind of start out a little bit quieter, and I make a couple, two or three just quiet cow calls to where if there's something within 50 yards, they can hear it. And then I listen. Do I hear anything thumping around? Do I hear swishing? And I'm not, and at this time, I'm not like digging in my pockets trying to find candy bars or trying to find my next call or scratching my head or anything. I'm barely even breathing. I'm just like listening, and I'm controlling my breath to where I'm listening after I make the calls. So that way I don't miss anything, whether it's up close or far away. And if I haven't heard anything, within a minute or two, then I'll cow call louder. I'll cow call 3 or 4 times with a lot of volume to where it'll reach out, a few hundred yards away. And I listen. I let that set for a minute. And if I don't hear anything at that point, then I'll bugle. And it'll just be a wimpy, not a real wimpy, just kind of a locator bugle, just the 3 note bugle. Just real non-aggressive type bugle. Now, then I wait, and I wait again. If I don't hear nothing, I may cow call a couple more times. Wait, then I'll do a full bugle to where at the end of the bugle I'll grunt or chuckle 3 or 4 times, but not super aggressive. And I wait, and then I'll cow call a couple more times. I'm trying to paint in the picture this bull's mind's eye that's sitting over there, that there were some cows over here and a bull kind of come over and he's interested. Something's making him bugle. Like, is this cow getting close to coming into estrus? And then my final bugle will be a really aggressive, nasty sound, a big lip ball bugle. That's where you buzz your lips. on the tube, and you hit the notes, and then I do some big giant thunderous grunts, very loud, very aggressive.
Do you have
And
a bugle tube with us or with you that you could show us?
yes, 1 second. I think I have one here close by. Okay, so you wanted to hear some of these calls or the last call or?
Yeah, would you mind showing us, the bugles, the wimpy bugle, a little bit more with the grunt or the chuckles on the end, and then the really gnarly lip ball?
Okay, okay. So first off, I'm gonna do those cow calls. That's just the real quiet ones. The very first two. Then the louder ones. A little louder. And then the first bugle, that locator bugle, just non-aggressive, just saying, "Hey, anybody else out there?" Just trying to make contact with another elk. The next one is going to be a little more involved. Just have 3 or 4 grunts on the end of it. And then the last one is going to be that full-blown lip ball. That's where you're buzzing your lips. You hit that big screamy high note, and then you're doing some really thunderous chuckles at the end. And if I don't hear anything answer or vocalize from an elk after those 3 bugles, then I'm moving on. I'm moving on to the next spot. Now, depending on the topography of the land, I may walk 100 yards. I may walk a quarter mile or a half mile, depending on how far my calls are permeating into the woods.
So that's your way of like, I just covered this draw, this big valley right here, wherever my sound is
Yeah.
carrying you, and then repeat that down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can hear your bugle echoing around the little canyon or the draw, or depending on the country, or up onto from maybe you're bugling from a low point up into some pockets, it's like, well, if I walked over here, I don't think my bugle probably reached that spot.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we think our bugles penetrate better than they really do. And here's why. I went hound hunting with a buddy here a couple years ago, and we were hunting for bears, and he turned loose on a bear, and he's like, us elk hunters think you can hear an elk, or the elk can hear us from a long ways away. He's like, these dogs are 250 yards away, and you can barely hear them. And hound dogs, you can hear a long ways. I think elk, you can hear them a little better, but still, I mean, these things were just over over a little ridge there on the backside of a ridge, and you could barely hear them. So that's why I always say, maybe you should bugle a little bit more than some people might think. Some people will say, "Oh, hardly ever bugle," or "Don't bugle at all," or don't bugle very much. I kind of look at it like trout fishing. If you're trout fishing a stream, you don't just walk up and cast once and like, well, there's no fish here. I mean, you're casting out in every little plate, every little riffle, or behind every rock, or wherever you think a fish may be laying. That's kind of how you have to look at it, calling elk. You have to like get your calls to penetrate into every place that an elk may be sitting.
So you said something calling from a low point too, that really made me think about this situation I have this fall. It's pretty open country with the aspen pockets on those shady sides. And the tops even can have a lot of that serviceberry and chokecherry kind of lots of good bear country. But
Yeah.
so the tops of these ridges going down to these various little draws, little pockets, not big mountains of Colorado, but just the typical Northwest Colorado kind of stuff. And you got those little draws. The tops of those, as you go along that in the morning, your wind's going down into stuff. But in the bottoms, those are accessible as well. They're almost open. And the one sun side of that mountain, which you can hike down in there, it's wide open and easy hiking to get in there. And I was kind of trying to figure out, maybe I go down. I always want to kind of be up high to be able to see, but maybe I go down below and hit each one of those drainages down in the bottom early in the morning, and that wind's coming, thermals are coming down right in my face. I don't know. Is that kind of odd? Is that weird? Stay low in those and be able to call in each one or every couple of them just to kind of locate some of those animals, or would you stay up on top?
No, it wouldn't be out of the question. But the real question is, where are those elk first thing in the morning, like at daybreak? Do they go down at night to rut down in the bottom, the valley bottoms, or are they going to the tops? Because certain parts of Colorado, the elk are up, they go up above timberline at night and feed, and then come back down into the timber. Whereas some places they'll come from high and then go down to the lush valley floor and feed, and then they'll work their way back up in the morning.
Yeah, these there is no above tree line. It's pretty low in the world of elk country, like maxing out at 7,500, 8,000 maybe. And
Is it just kind of like rolling foothills rather than like steep mountains, more like foothills?
yeah, you're talking maybe five from the bottom to the top, you're talking to maybe 500 feet.
Oh, yeah.
They're not big, but still suck to climb up every once in a while.
Right, right, right. So, yeah, you could definitely do that from the bottom. One thing though is if you're up high, the amount of steps you take to run a ridge line is going to be fewer if you're high than low. Because low, you have every one of those little draws, and those ridges, the lower they get, the broader they get, right? So you're gonna have just way more miles or more steps in to cover the same amount of country. But if you're like, I really think these elk are up in these little pockets, and you're being strategic on your wind, it's definitely smart to do that. One thing too is, let's say the elk are up on top or something, they're at first light. They may or may not come over onto your side of this big ridge system. Maybe they go over onto the other side. So if you're low on that one side, you're not going to maybe hear them if they go over on the other side. Whereas if you're up high, you might be able to hear them, or you could zigzag back and forth across the ridge. You can check one side of the ridge and then walk 100 yards, 500 yards, whatever, back and forth, and just check pocket to pocket.
But how are you checking pockets up on top of that ridge in an early morning, late evening when you know there's a good chance for that wind to go suck it down?
Well, there again, if you're calling often, you're hoping that you make contact before you ever get into their wind trail. So you're hoping that, let's say they're at this one point, maybe you're 200 or 300 yards side hill of the ridge from them. Of course, the wind's blowing down, but the wind trail's not going down on the elk. So you're hoping that you hear them talk before before you're just directly right above them, and the wind gets them. So most of the time, depending on the country, most of the time you can do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes not, but typically you can usually get them to talk a little before you'll be on like one of those finger ridges, and the edge of those finger ridges, and you'll call, and the next ridge over down low, you'll hear it. You're like, okay, so then you can make your move. You can go down on the ridge that you're on, or the draw or whatever, and then get on their same topographical line or same elevation, and then go side hill to them.
Yeah. So next thing is, and last one for you is my biggest challenge, I feel like, is not necessarily finding the elk. It's not getting within those 200 yards or so, but it's when I've made that contact with him and he knows I'm an elk in the area, and I know he's there somewhere. That last 100 yards is rough. And it's
Yeah.
open country. It's rough, and it is way more unsuccessful than successful than most. What do you got for me there?
Yeah, that's a very common question. Um, a lot of guys will have the same, they can get them to call, they can get them to come, but they get to that 100 yards and they won't commit. The bull locks up.
Come back, give you a little, step back a little.
Yeah, yeah. That's the kind of country that it's really nice to have that shooter caller set up, the second person. That way you can set them up in front of you, even up maybe 50 to 100 yards, however far you can see ahead. You have to put yourself into think about where the elk would be able to come and first visualize where you're standing. And a lot of times they will get to that point or a little short of that point and they'll stop and they'll hang up thinking they're going to catch you moving up on them, or they want to see you first. So if you're 100 yards out, then they're going to stop at 100 yards and look. But if you're in thick enough cover to where they have to come in like 20, 30 yards, then for the shooter, that's really good. But sometimes some of that stuff's real open. Let's say a burn or some big open timber with no underbrush. A lot of times the shooter and I don't walk together. I put my shooter in front of me. We still make it visual contact. So let's say I can see him 60 yards ahead. Maybe it's 100 yards in a burn. Maybe it's 100 yards or something. So as we're moving, we have that space in between us, and I'll do the calling. The shooter walks along quietly, and then if you get a response, he's already up there. He's already closer. He's further. Provided the elk is in front of him or her, you've already got that distance spanned between you. Then they just get ready for the shot, and then the caller starts working them up.
Yeah, yeah. Gonna be solo this year, so
So if you're gonna be solo, then you have to, once you get your bull talking, you have to like really assess, like, well, what's this look like? Where you have to look ahead. Where am I going to set up in this bull? It's like, this is a terrible spot. I'm not going to be able to call him in here and have it work out. So sometimes you just have to kind of let him go, but maintain contact. And especially if it's morning, he's probably going to move and go bed down somewhere, probably on a north facing slope, somewhere with a little bit more timber, a little more cover. That way he has shade. And as they get towards those places, you want to kind of keep on them. You want to keep up with them, but you don't want to expose yourself. You just want to keep them talking enough to where, you know where they're at. And then once they get in a better place to call them in, that's when you want to make your move.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do because sometimes they're bugling pretty good, and you're like, oh man, I'm pretty sure I could call that thing in, but it's all open. Or maybe you look for that terrain feature. Maybe it's all open, but they go through just over a little hill, and there's just like a little coulee, or there's just a little terrain break just on the other side of it, but it doesn't sound like he's moving off. You could hurry up and get over there and close a distance and do some calling to where he finally just has to pop up, at a close distance to where you could get a shot. And there's some trickery too. So let's say he was going to have to come out of that little terrain feature and walk up on the hill to see you, which a lot of times they will. Before you ever get to where you want to shoot from, let's say 50, 60 yards back, you do a bunch of calling there, and then you quietly move up to the shooting spot.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. In fact, I'll even like cast my calls behind me. I'll point my bugle tube the opposite direction. Sometimes I'll cover it a little bit with my hand and I'll leave some gaps between my fingers to where it gets some airflow, to where it'll bugle, it'll still sound like a good bugle, but it'll just be muffled and it'll sound like I'm further away.
Yeah.
And then I'll do that, and then I'll quietly move forward 30 yards.
Perfect.
And then I won't call anymore until it's like, okay, he's not coming. Now we're gonna have to start all this over again, But every time I call, I try to move up.
Got it. Well, there's a lot there for us for the day and for the fall to give us a couple of tips and things. And anything else you guys got going on that is exciting, new with the company this spring and summer that's worth sharing, or people just need to go to Phelps Calls and pick up some calls?
Yeah, we should have some elk hunting videos coming out again, probably middle of next month into July. Got a new call launch coming out. It's called the All American 3-Pack. So we've teamed up with 3 world champion elk callers. We have Eric Berglund, Jermaine Hodge, and Tony Gilbertson. They design their own signature elk call. They'll come in this 3-pack. They're all red, white, and blue, Star Spangled Banner, made in America, just like all of our calls. Anyway, the packaging is just going to be a little bit different than all of the rest of our packaging. It's all stars and stripes. But anyhow, each call is quite a bit different than the others. So that'll be kind of a new diaphragm for everybody to take for a test drive and see if they like them. We've had a few we've put out there at the trade shows, sold and give away, and people really liked them so far. So I think people really like these once we do our big I don't know, our big kickoff, I guess. We're going to try to kick them off on the 4th of July, of course. So
Perfect.
I think they might even be available a little early, but that's our cool elk calls for the summer coming out.
Nice. I'll have to get a hold of Jermaine. He and I had a episode, I don't know, it's over a year ago now, so I'll have to reach out to him again. And he's a cool dude. I loved chatting with him. He was fun.
Oh yeah, that guy, he's the real deal, and he loves to talk. He comes and helps out in the booth at the trade shows with us, and then we have the night, we go back and get an Airbnb or whatever and sit around and visit. And that guy will keep you up at night. He can operate on not very much sleep. He's fun. I love that guy.
To him being a wrestler. Those wrestlers make some of the best hunters.
Yep.
They can get after it. So
Absolutely.
well, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Stick on here and I'll hit the record button and or the stop recording button, and we'll call it a day. So thanks so much, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime.
Thanks, Dirk.
Thank you.
To the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country.